Okay, so this is like the seventh time I've actually tried to record this, and hopefully I can get it in one take. Um, who knows? Probably not, but I guess we'll see. I basically did a video called My Experience with Garuda Mokka or Mokka. I still don't know how to pronounce it properly, so I do apologize for that. But I have to say that it was largely an excellent experience. However, in my time using it, I kind of discovered some things about my preferences when it comes to Linux. And I guess to be as transparent as possible, I just don't think that Arch Linux is really my thing. I mean, I kind of get the appeal, like loving Linux, loving to tinker, all the fun stuff that comes along with it. I'm just to a point now, after 13 years of using Linux, where I don't necessarily want to do any of that stuff. Um, I like the simplicity of Windows. I really dislike the complexity of cringe in Windows. There is a lot of it, unfortunately. So when I think to myself, man, I wish I could have that Windows experience, but on an operating system that doesn't spy on me, that isn't loaded down with issues, really only one thing comes to mind, and that's Linux Mint. I've had nothing but mostly positive experiences with Mint over the past year, from my all AMD PC that I'm currently on, all the way back to a year ago. I had a computer with an RTX 4060 Ti in it, and I actually recorded a video titled Gaming in Linux Mint, which is the most viewed video on my channel with over 10,000 views. People seem to really like that video. And I have a sequel coming for it too. I just have to find the time to capture all the stuff I have to capture for it. So it is taking time, but that video was recorded on an RTX 4060 Ti PC, and the experience was just absolutely wonderful. Now, that's not to say that Linux Mint is perfect, and since this is a video about my experience with it, I have to point out the negatives. And I don't mean to keep saying by the way. I don't. I guess I'm like Post Malone where he does the same thing. But we're going to talk about the positives first, and then we'll go over the negatives because the positives far outweigh the negatives. So for starters, Mint out of the box quite literally just works, and it works so well. And it might have my favorite setup out of any distro I've ever used when it comes to the software manager, how it handles updates. It is just so clean and so functional that I honestly get giddy thinking about it. So, as you can see here, we are running Linux Mint 22.1 with the Linux kernel 6.8.0-57 generic kernel. We have a Ryzen 5 7606 core processor, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 clocked to 6400 megahertz, and we have an RX 7600 GPU, and we are running Linux Mint on a Samsung 990 Pro 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Now that I addressed that, I can close the system information applet. Let's come over here to the start menu, and I'm so sorry to call it that. I mean, you got to remember, a lot of my lingo comes from Windows. We'll call it the Mint menu, okay? Good compromise for the moment. We open the software manager, and what I really appreciate about it is that there are only two types of packages here, that being system packages and flatpaks. Now, one instance of a flatpak being my preferred version of an application versus the system packages with OBS Studio. Now, what I really appreciate is that Linux Mint automatically disables the showing of unverified flatpaks, which is nice to kind of weed out the packages you might be less interested in trusting. Unfortunately, a lot of the apps that I really like have official flatpaks. Now, personally, I've done a lot of testing between system packages and flat packages amongst all the applications I use, and I kind of have a general rule of thumb. So for OBS in particular, I always download the Flatpak, and it's just right here, and I love that out of the box. I can download what is, in my opinion, the definitive OBS experience on Linux. Hands down, just out of the box, functional. I can connect it to my YouTube or my Twitch account. I can see stream chats, and I can also see my stream stats. It's just awesome. And as you can see here, if I open it back up, this is what I mean. We got the chat window, and we've got our YouTube Live control panel. Now, in the system package of OBS, and every other version that I've tested without modifying the application with extensions, there is no stream chat, there are no stream stats. And that just kind of gets under my skin a little bit because I use it primarily for streaming. Now, if you were just simply recording on it, I don't think you'd have an issue with the system package. But one of those general rules of thumb that I mentioned earlier that I never actually got around to saying is sometimes I'll look up a package, it'll display the system and the flatpak, and as you can see, they have review scores. Now, generally speaking, say I looked up Lutris, and this is actually legitimately the case with Lutris, you will see the flatpak and you'll see the system package, and the flatpak will have a higher rating score. So as you can see, the system pack for OBS is at 3.7, and the flat hub version is 4.3. Now, I have other reasons for choosing the flat pack of OBS, but in general, if I see a flat pack that's higher rated, or vice versa, a system package that is higher rated than the alternative, I will install whatever is higher rated, assuming I don't have any issues with it, in which case that's kind of rule number 2. If the system package doesn't work right, try the flat pack. If the flat pack doesn't work right, switch to the system package, see if that fixes your problem. And in Linux Mint, that has always fixed my problems. If I had an issue with the system package, the flatpak would fix it and vice versa. So out of the box, I think the software manager is just excellent. It's not bogged down with tons of nonsense. It quite literally just does the job. It gets your software downloaded and installed as quickly as possible in a clean interface. It is just a highly functional piece of software. I really like it. And I'll just go ahead and look up Lutris really quickly. Anyway, Flat Hub 4.2, system package 3.5. That is the prime example I could think of, other than OBS, which we just saw, of a situation where, just as a general rule of thumb, you would pick the one that's higher rated. Now, the differences between flat packs and system packages largely have to do with how they're handled and installed. And flat packs run isolated from the system files. They come with all the dependencies needed to run the application. And in the past, that was an awesome feature. But I've noticed that in modern day Linux, I don't really have trouble with most system packages. There are still a couple times where, like, for instance, in the past, Lutris would not download any of its dependencies, and I couldn't force download them in the application itself in the settings, which is something that you can do, but it would not work for me. But the FlatHub version had all the dependencies and was functioning flawlessly. So they do handle things differently. System packages will have access to any drives connected to your computer. It has access to all system files. With Flatpaks, you have to give it directory permissions if you want it to be able to access other things like that. Not to say I've never seen it automatically just read and be able to access an external hard drive or a secondary drive in your computer. But generally speaking, you'd have to download Flatsil and go to the application and add that directory to the particular application that you want to access that drive from, and then go from there. So, positive number 1, Software Manager is awesome. It just works. It is quite frankly just so good. Number 2, this might be a small thing for a lot of people, but all Steam desktop icons for my games actually display properly. That's not to say that all applications do. For instance, in Lutris, I installed Battle.net, created a desktop icon, and it was broken. Now, to be fair, you can fix that by right-clicking on the application, clicking Properties, and you can click the icon and you can search for and set a custom one. In Garuda Mokka, all of my Steam games, well, not all of them, I would say like 75% of them, maybe 70%, maybe 65%, I don't know, a lot of them, though, would display as broken icons on the desktop, and I would have to manually download and set the icons. Now, that's before I knew that Steam actually stored game icons in a directory, so that would be a faster solution than manually downloading them. But at that point, I think you're getting into kind of expressing, you get to pick your icon, you get to set it, and it kind of makes it more you. So it's not necessarily a negative trade-off, but it is something that did slightly annoy me sometimes. But they do work in Linux Mint. Thirdly, just look at this loadout. Look at this setup. Yes, it is very Windows-esque, and that is quite literally the point. It it is everything that was good about Windows before Windows 11 multiplied by like 3. It is simple, it is effective. You have your categories, and you'll find a lot of these features in other distributions too. This isn't particular to Linux Mint, but Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu, which is one of the best supported distributions on the planet, which is then in turn based on Debian, which is one of the most stable distributions. So with Mint, you get a familiar and functional setup out of the box while also getting top tier support, tons of documentation, and on top of that, you get all the other goodies that come with being an Ubuntu user, minus the bad things. So, for instance, Ubuntu's are pushing snaps. I don't think I've ever met a single person in my life that likes them. I know I definitely don't like them because they just don't work. They're better now than they were, but they are still bad. Mint has system and flatpaks. That's all you need. It's got the support of Ubuntu. It's got the performance of Ubuntu, minus if the version of Ubuntu you're running has Wayland, and then certain games in Steam just flat out refuse to work. At least that's how it was in my experience. In a situation like that, Linux Mint is just better. And to be perfectly honest, Ubuntu was really bad when I installed it on this computer. I tested it after Garuda Mokka, and it would crash me to the login screen constantly. I tried using 24.10, unplayable. The whole computer would lock up from running repo, which is a very small, not intensive at all to run game. I couldn't even play it. It was very hit or miss in that way. And on top of that, Ubuntu is a technically more challenging operating system to run. And this might also seem like a small detail, but if you love Linux, you probably feel the same way about this that I do. Ubuntu has a telemetry question in the setup after installation of the OS, and it's automatically ticked on. You have to manually untick the box. There is not a single sign of that in Linux Mint. Nothing at all. So you literally do just get everything that's good about Ubuntu, from the support to everything. And when I say support, I don't just mean package support. I mean online support in the forums. So many excellent things that Ubuntu has. But you don't have snaps. You have a much better software manager. And it's just, generally speaking, a more reliable operating system in so many ways. It's kind of mind-boggling to me how far Ubuntu has fallen. And I do think it's better now than it was some years ago, but it just pales in comparison to Linux Mint. It really does. And lastly, but not least, before I kind of talk about some negatives, I really, really love how the Explorer is set up out of the box to access your files. I have purposefully hidden the menu bar. I just prefer it that way. But this is functionality at its finest. It's clean. Everything is exactly where you would expect for it to be. And I would say that ultimately, if you want a Windows experience with the stability of Linux and without the spyware and the online accounts and taking away control from the user, Linux Mint just gets you as close to that goal as possible. And you don't have to sacrifice or go back on any of your morality, how you feel about these subjects, about data privacy and all the other caveats that you kind of have to look past when you use Windows. But it just works better than Windows for me on my RX 7600. And a particular example of this is Mint uses less VRAM than Windows, and I am legitimately able to play every game in my library that I want to play at 1080p high settings with no VRAM related frame rate drops. And I cannot do that in Windows 11. I will sometimes idle on the Windows 11 desktop with over 2 gigabytes of video memory being absolutely bored by the OS, leaving me with effectively only 6 gigabytes of VRAM. And that's just unacceptable. Borderline unusable, even at 1080p high preset. A lot of games will push you right up to that 8 gigabyte mark, and some of them do push you over. Even those games work better in Linux. It's crazy. Don't know what Microsoft is doing. You can't even move the taskbar in Windows 11 to another side of the screen still. And not to mention, Windows 11 24H2 has some of the most annoying location privacy pop-ups I've ever seen. You have it disabled from the installation, and then it will still ask you. Not to mention, if you create a Rufus Windows 11 bootable USB, and you create a local account, and you disable all the requirements to install Windows 11 on whatever PC you're going to try to install it on, if you ever want to access on a local account your Microsoft games through the Xbox app or apps to the Windows Store that maybe you purchased that you can't just download for free, because I will give Windows this. You don't have to sign into a Microsoft account to download free apps. But if you want to access something you purchased, like say maybe you had an Xbox and you bought Lies of P on it, well, that game is also on the Xbox app on PC. You basically gain the ability to play it on your Xbox and on your PC. Say you want to play it on your PC, you got a brand new computer, you know you can run the game at over 60 FPS, you can finally try it with mouse and keyboard. If you sign in to that Xbox app with your Microsoft account or any other Microsoft related system in Windows 11, your operating system will quite literally harass you to basically transform your computer into an online account. Even if you select that you only want it, your Microsoft account being accessed through Microsoft apps, the entire OS is basically a Microsoft app. So it's just a lose lose situation, lose after lose after lose. And not to mention that on my particular computer, I can't even play Sony games. The Sony PC ports like Marvel Spider-Man 2 or Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart because my computer shuts down. And this is caused by what I've read online from multiple sources is a bug in the AMD driver with Sony titles that AMD has known about for well over a year. They have not fixed, where for some reason the Sony titles and literally no other games I've tested, they will overclock your GPU to above its maximum allowed frequency, and the computer shuts down as a failsafe to protect your system, to protect your graphics card more specifically. And that does not happen in Linux. Now, could it be that the AMD graphics driver is so well implemented in the Linux kernel at this point that it's not even a contest with Windows? Or could it be something else? Maybe AMD just doesn't care. Maybe they want you to go out and buy an Intel Arc, whatever. I mean, I'm sure you all can figure out which option is the good option, the real option. So, negatives, there are some. I'll try to showcase them to the best of my ability. Sometimes context menus will not display properly, specifically on the desktop. You'll right click and see if I can trigger it here. Probably not. But basically, all of these icons up to here, basically to open in terminal, will not render. And these icons will be pushed up to the top of the context menu, and it'll just be empty space below that. Not a big deal. I've never been able to not fix it by simply right clicking again, but that is something to take note of. Secondly, when putting apps, snapping them to the left and right side of the screen. So you have one app on the left quadrant of your monitor and one app on the right. With Firefox and Chromium, I've noticed that when I do that, Firefox's title bar will totally disappear and the URL box will be pushed up against the top of the screen, and then it's not scaling properly with the other window at that point. And the only way that I could fix that was by holding the Windows key, which for you guys, it's probably Alt. Out of the box, I believe it's Alt Linux Mint. But you hold the Windows key and you can grab anywhere on the window and you can fix it. So a minor annoyance, but that's basically all you're going to find in Linux Mint, or at least, based on my experience, that's all I have found. And don't mind the Minecraft baby fin. Okay, my kids really, really enjoy watching videos on my PlayStation. Okay, I love them to death. I'm going to allow it to continue happening, but as long as that is happening, my YouTube recommended is going to be unwatchable for me. So, just wanted to confront that head on. So let's see, what else have I had issues with Linux Mint? Well, okay, here's the biggest gripe I have with Linux Mint, and it's kind of a positive and it's gripe. It's on an older Linux kernel, but not so far out of date that I would say it would cause any issues for most people. But with an older Linux kernel comes an older Mesa driver, comes a less supported Wayland implementation. So I don't know if I mentioned that in this video or not, the difference in gaming performance or the experience of gaming in Linux Mint versus something like Garuda Mokka, which has Wayland and an up-to-date kernel and all that good stuff. But let me explain it to you the best that I can, and then I'll try to give you a visual representation of what I'm talking about. In Garuda, I could be full screen capturing in OBS. That means my whole monitor. I could have a game open and I could have 20 applications open. I never drop a frame on the rendering of my actual desktop. So what I mean, and we'll kind of show you what happens in Mint. Let's click always on top for that window. Drag that to the side, and we'll pretend like we're streaming because I'm recording at the same bit rate that I stream at. And say you open up a game like Zenless Zone Zero, which does work in Linux. It's awesome. I really enjoy it. If you guys ever want to see a tutorial for how I personally install it, let me know. We'll click Start. And this is the best solution I can find to still be able to read stream chat without having to look away from my computer to phone or something. This will cause performance degradation because it's having to draw this application over the game, and in doing so, does diminish performance slightly. Now, when I say performance, I don't necessarily mean frame rate. I mean more specifically the way that the game draws itself on the screen. It will look choppy. Now, that alone is frustrating. But the other thing that happens with OBS that's kind of aggravating and is an Xorg related issue, and yes, I'm aware Linux Mint has a Wayland session. It's in beta. I've personally used it. It is missing features. It does not work properly for my use case. So Xorg it is. But in the situation that you are full screen capturing, whether it's streaming or recording, I have tested in so many different intensive games an FPS decrease of up to 10 to 15 frames per second from full screen capturing. Now, you might not be able to see this clearly in the video, but right now on my monitor, this game is running at 150 FPS and it looks like 60. That is from full screen capturing. So I like the full screen capture when I'm testing games, so I can just tab out or close the game and launch another one. You know, it's kind of the shtick of my channel. I want people to see what their experience could be like, not just with numbers, but legitimately, oh, he launched the game, he used that Proton version, he's doing this, he's doing that. So let's tab back over to OBS here, and look at that. This is another thing that doesn't happen in Wayland and Garuda Mokka. The actual drawing of applications on the monitor and multiple things from alt-tabbing or loading up menus or loading up additional applications will have greatly diminished performance on Xorg. Now, it never goes into non-functional territory, but it is noticeable, and things like that do kind of frustrate me. But remember all the good you're getting in Linux Mint. The most important thing is that this is remaining functional, and there's a way to make this better. So first off, you cannot display OBS on top of the window, but say you're going to do that anyway, then just window capture your game, kill the display capture, and look at that. It now looks like the frame rate it's supposed to look like. Now, it might still appear a little stuttery sometimes because remember, we are drawing a chat box in the corner of the OBS application over this intensive 3D application. I say intensive even though it's running at 150 FPS. But it does make the experience tolerable enough, I hope I said that right, for me to be happy with the performance and the visual quality of the experience while still maintaining the usability of basically the closest thing I could get in Linux to see-through windows on Windows 11, which in Windows 11, if I wanted to read stream chat, I would just use see-through windows, and I would make that window transparent and force it to stay on top of other windows. And on Windows, at least in my experience, you're less likely to experience diminished visual returns in this situation. And this is by far not the worst that it could be. There are games, like the really intensive GPU games, really make Xorg struggle. Now, if you're just playing the game You don't watch videos in the background. You don't have a second monitor. You're not drawing an application over the game. You're not full screen capturing. Then you're not going to have any issues with it. But it's when you start adding layers on top of the already existing experience, that's when you'll run into issues. So that was a decent test. Not the greatest example of what can happen, but you kind of saw it. Just imagine what you just saw, but even choppier and even worse. So, other than that, and one other small issue that I can think of off the top of my head, which is, and this is really small, sometimes I'll right click on a window border and the menu will disappear immediately. Specifically, I notice it with OBS. Sorry, I forgot to turn that on. So, let's see if we can, yeah, so right there. That right click just automatically disappeared. Yeah. So it just happens every so often. I don't know if that's a flatpak thing with OBS in particular. I don't notice it with other apps, but that is like the only other thing I can think of to gripe about. I got God of War Ragnarok the other day. I was playing it super smooth, great experience, no issues, not a single one. Outlast 2 running it at 167 FPS at 1080p high settings, absolutely amazing. Helldivers 2, while it did require some tinkering in the settings, I had to turn on async compute. Um, and window capture through OBS, it did totally fix the visual issues I was having with the game, and it was amazing. It was a joy to play. I had fun. Resident Evil Village is another game that suffers from display capture, window capture, and it works fine. And it works more than fine. It runs at like a ridiculous frame rate. And then the first Berserker Kazan also suffers from display capture, just like Zenless Zone Zero. It's noticeable, but it's not so bad that it makes you angry. Um, but you kind of get the point of what I'm saying. Linux Mint has so many amazing features, so many positive things that I could name off that I have named off. And every gripe that I have with this distribution are things that never enter the realm of not being usable. The operating system always works. I've not broken Linux Mint ever. I've never broken an Ubuntu based distribution, period, matter of fact. Unless you're Linus Tech Tips and you install Pop OS and you install Steam and then that breaks it. So I guess it is possible. But I don't think you're very likely to have to ever worry about something like that in Linux Mint because it is such a fine tuned, super refined, excellent out of the box experience. And I quite literally just installed it, installed my apps, downloaded my games, and everything has just worked. I've not restarted my system in days. My performance issues are usually, you know, I can achieve a fix by simply window capturing versus display capturing, or maybe not drawing another window on top of the game. And everything else is hunky dory. I really can't say enough positive things about it. And I'm sure I could ramble on for hours about Linux Mint and why I love it so much. But here's what I'll say. If you're a Windows user, or maybe even if you're just a Linux user, and you are interested in the most easy to use functional Linux distribution experience that you could ever think of, and that's what you want. You just want simplicity, or you want to get away from Microsoft. Whatever the reason, I think that Linux Mint is a great place to start. You can do literally everything you want to in it. Your games are going to work. Well, fragmentation is an issue. I can't say definitively for you that you will have the same exact experience, but just go online and read. Read what people say about this operating system. It is in such good standing with the community. It's almost like Debian at this point. Everybody loves it, and there's a really good reason for that. So if you're looking to go down the path of a Linux journey in your own life, I would recommend starting here. And maybe one day you'll prefer the Tinker. Maybe you'll want a more complicated experience. Maybe you like the idea of fixing a problem or learning about the operating system, and that's totally fine. Those more, I would say, out of the box, complicated distributions, ones that require more effort from the user, they do exist and they're always going to be there for you to test. Maybe one day you install Arch from the command line and then you build your operating system out of it. But for me personally, I just want to install my distro, I want it to work, and I want everything to work. And I am willing to compromise a few small details in order to have the experience that I'm having, and it's been absolutely wonderful. I've actually come to the point where I've thought about if I could figure out a way to get maybe the controller built into the ROG Ally to work in Mint, I would just install Linux Mint on the ROG Ally. Like honestly, I love Mint that much that I just think it would be a good experience. But it would require some tinkering, I believe, to get it set up properly. But needless to say, that is and has been my experience with Linux Mint for a very long time now. I think it's a wonderful operating system. The team behind it are absolutely incredible. It does everything and more that you could ever want to do with a computer, with your operating system. And I just absolutely adore it. I don't think that unless maybe Pop! OS 2404 dropped and Cosmic was as amazing as it looks, and it had Wayland and it had a more up to date Linux kernel, I don't think I would ever switch because one day Mint will get there. But the devs behind this distro are more concerned about giving you a stable, usable experience. And like I said, despite those small limitations, you can achieve that. And you can achieve it. You can achieve it easier than ever. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. So we're going to wrap this video up. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to see more Linux content, be sure to click the nice shiny buttons below the video title. And you can maybe turn on notifications if you'd like to see my future content because there's going to be some cool stuff coming up. One thing is going to be my sequel to the Gaming and Linux Mint video. And in that video, it is my intention to test as many games as I can possibly fit on my hard drives, on my SSDs, in one video. It's going to be long. I'm going to show you guys tons of Steam games. I'm going to show you games from other launchers. I'm going to show you games that require tinkering to get working. I'm going to show you games that flat out don't work properly at all. I'm going to show you the good and the bad times and the in-between times. And I think that it's going to be a video unlike one you've probably ever seen before when it comes to gaming and Linux because you're going to see what it would be like if you did the same thing. Which, once again, can't say your experience would be matched to mine, but you're going to see what it's like to select that game in Steam. You're going to see what version of Proton you're going to run it with. You're going to see whatever launch commands you need. And newsflash, I think I have one game out of the 80 I had installed in Garuda Mokka that had to have a launch command. And right now in Linux Mint, there's only one, God of War Ragnarok, which I'm going to make a video about that too. It's going to be an epic video. Just keep your eyes out for it. I think it's going to be something special. And just want to say that it means the world to me when you guys watch my stuff. I want nothing more than a few simple goals on this channel, and that is to be kind to people. I just want to make people happy. I want to spread positivity. Kindness and positivity kind of go hand in hand, you know, if you couldn't tell. And I want to be a helping hand in anybody's Linux journey, whether they are a returning user, whether they're a Windows user, or whether they, I don't know, literally anything else, any other reason they might want to use Linux. Whether they just want to use it to game without having to pay a $100 activation key or without having to buy a $20 key off of a sketchy website. Or maybe you had the same issue I had where your computer was shutting off because of a buggy AMD driver with certain Sony PC ports. Whatever the reasoning, always feel free to come by this channel, leave a comment, or join one of my lives. Like I think I said earlier, I try to stream every single night. And you are welcome here at any time with your questions. If you want to share your Linux experiences, you're always welcome. That's all I want to do. I just want to be a helping hand. I want to spread my love for Linux to other people so that other people can hopefully see the light and see that there's a different path than what they think is the only path. That being Microsoft cringed 11s. 11s. Golly, I messed it up. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If I accidentally breathed in the mic, by the way, I'm sorry. I got a big ass nose. Sometimes it just happens. Didn't mean for that to happen. I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.